Mr. Happy Living here. I love entrepreneurs and artists and coaches and creatives and people from every walk of life that have discovered their reason for being on this planet. And that's why I love Jay Miller. He's an entrepreneur and a coach too. Jay runs an innovative company called Victory Sports that offers sports performance training, fitness and exercise classes, homeschool PE classes, camps and clinics, and all things sports and recreation. So Jay, welcome to the Something Significant Show, broadcasting from WITV7 in the beautiful Queen City, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Awesome. So just tell our audience a little bit about what you're doing these days to leave your mark of significance on the world.
So my wife and I actually run a nonprofit, Victory Sports, and we operate as the global sports school. So we call it GSS. And we focus on training, coaching, homeschool PE, like you mentioned, anything sports and recreation. So sometimes people joke about being the traveling coach. So we go to people's, towns and cities. And if they have a group of people, sometimes they'll ask us to run clinics and camps and these homeschool PE classes. And so we're traveling all around. And anything sports and recreation, we use that to allow kids to have a lot of fun. But something that we really like to focus on is the team building aspect. And so we have a motto. It's called Training Beyond the Game. So it goes a little bit deeper than just the sports, just the field or the court.
Good stuff. So let's take a little journey back in time. What were you doing, say, 10 years ago, back in 2010?
So in 2010, my family and I, we had just moved down here. We just moved down 2 years prior, and I was to take a job as the director of a sports ministry. The sports ministry was called Source Sports. It was in Matthews, North Carolina. It's no longer there, but we came down in 2008 to head that up. And so in 2010, I was about 2 years in, and we reached probably in a good year about 5,000 students and families with sports and recreation, camps, clinics, similar to what I'm doing now.
Awesome. So you were working for somebody else then, and
Yes.
You're working for yourself now, but in the same game.
Yes, absolutely.
How about back in 2000, 20 years ago?
So in 2000, I just got married, and so I was just out of college, fresh out of college. I graduated in 1999. And so in 2000, in February of 2000, I got my first job to run a community center. And so I was in charge of renting out the facility. There was a banquet hall, but there was also a gym. And so the church owned it. And the vision was to build a sports and rec program. And so that was my first taste of the sports and rec industry.
So you've been on the same trajectory. I love this quote by Lionel Messi. And Kyle, you can correct me live if you want. Messi from Argentina. He says, "I start early and I stay late, day after day, year after year. It took me 17 years and 114 days to become an overnight success." Does that reflect at all your last 20 years, Jay?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's yeah.
Talk just a little bit about that. How dreams take time to culminate.
Yeah. So in 2000, I'm a bit of a visionary. I like to dream big. I like to vision. That's actually something that energizes me. So in 2000, I was ready to take over the world instantly with sports and recreation and coaching. And so I learned a lot. There were many failures or educations, whatever you want to call them. But I learned a lot. And really, the biggest education I got was that things take time. And so 20 years in, it's funny because now 20 years in, our homeschool PE classes specifically are now at a point where I can say, wow, I feel like we figured something out. And it's 20 years later. That's
great, but it's learning. It's learning what works, what doesn't work, but also time changes. Look at how much technology has changed.
Oh yeah.
To what you're doing today, you couldn't have envisioned 20 years
Mhm.
ago.
That's
very,
right.
very interesting, the time traveling. Okay, so my unique definition of significance contains 4 elements, Jay. It's doing things you love, in places you love, with people you love, and creating something of value to others. So it's doing, but it's also giving. But to be a giver, you need excess capacity in your life. So what are your personal practices, physical, mental, spiritual, financial, emotional? What do you do to increase your capacity so you can take good care of yourself and still have more to give to others?
Yeah. So, and that's another lesson that I had to learn over time was I didn't build in much of a capacity early on. And so there were times where I felt burnout or overwhelmed. I've learned over the years, one thing that's very important is exercising. So we do fitness classes, but apart from that, working out with my son, going on walks, things that are physically active, but it's something to kind of relieve some stress, keep your heart rate up. And so that's been very good for me. I also love to play. I have, my son is 16, my daughter's 13, and I have a 4-year-old. He just turned 4. And so being out in the backyard and being physically active and present, that's something that is energizing to me. Another thing that I love to do is I love to learn. And so whether it's reading or listening to podcasts or watching videos or researching something on the internet, whether it be what I'm involved in or something that I'm not, I think for me, that helps challenge me mentally. I also love to write. And so I don't do very well at it, just keeping up with it. But I love to write. That gives me a chance to express, some thoughts or some visions and just some opinions. And so that helps me mentally. Faith is a big part of my life and my family's life. So spending time in prayer, going to church, learning, and not just, my belief system, but I love to learn about other people's faith, other people's religions. So, physical is a big thing for me. But I love to just kind of decompress mentally doing those few things. My wife sings, and so I like to sing with her. So
wait a minute, your wife sings.
Yeah.
And you like to sing with her, but you didn't say me and my wife sing, I noticed.
Well, my wife and I do sing. She is a singer. I could carry a tune.
Very good. So what you said you like to envision the future. What is your capacity building? What do you do to get away, to have the time to think about what you want in life?
Yeah. So with a 4-year-old, it becomes challenging, but my wife and I have figured out a way that each of us can get that alone time or me time. I love to go I love outdoors. So if I'm at a park, if I'm just in my backyard under a tree, I just love the outdoors. Sometimes it becomes my office and I just lift up the window shade. But I find a spot and I love to just vision and dream big, things that maybe, I question if I can actually attain it. I start to think about those things and dream about those things and vision about those things. And I find my soul becoming energized of just envisioning what could be. But for me, it's really finding that place where it's just peaceful. And to me, that's the outdoors.
All right. What's the big, big dream that's 10 years out that you can't imagine accomplishing, or you can kind of, but it's scary?
Yeah. So big vision, big dream is I would love to have a camp where the camp is based on sports and recreation, but it wouldn't just be for instruction. It'd be for retreats and to have groups come in for team building and corporate events. And basically the camp would be used for any kind of, or to promote a healthy and active lifestyle.
Yeah.
So it would be sleepover, residential, a little bit of everything.
I love that. I'd like to talk to you after the show. My family's engaged in a situation right now that was through struggle to get us there, but a complete dislocation from modern internet civilization
Mm.
to get some real deep learning over the course of a very extended period of time. And so this is kind of, a lot of times bad stuff gets you there. But I could envision, and matter of fact, I did, said, I wouldn't mind doing something like that, completely unplugged for 6 months. Wow.
Yes.
So I'd like to share that with you after the show.
Okay.
All right, Jay, well, let's take a commercial break to spread a little love for our awesome sponsors for the entire month of October, Zona Plus and Happy Living. Mr. Happy Living here. I love good things made by good people. That's why I love Zona Plus, the world's first software-controlled handheld device that improves cardiovascular health. You're going to love it too. I use mine almost every day to keep my blood pressure right where it should be. What surprised me though is this little device has been adding muscle to my biceps too. I walk around all day feeling pumped. Check them out at Zona.com. Use coupon code HAPPY for $50 off. Plus for every order placed during the month of October, I'll donate another $50 to WYTV7. Okay, we're back. And this is the Something Significant show. And I'm Matt Gersper. Hey, viewers and listeners, do yourself a big health favor and go buy a Zona Plus right after we finish this show. I love mine and use it every day. Well, nearly every day. And I know you're going to love yours too. Now back to my special guest, Jay Miller. He's the president of Victory Sports USA. So Jay, in my second book, it's called Turning Inspiration into Action, I explore the big idea that transformations and discovery of purpose often come from something devastating, terrible illness, a sudden death, something horrible that shakes a life. But I've been fortunate to use a happier way and created transformations in my life with inspiration. So my question is, was there a specific moment or a situation when either devastation or inspiration revealed to you the purpose you were meant to live?
That's a great question. So I think it's probably a combination, maybe of both, maybe a merge of both. So in 1999, I was graduating college, and prior to that, since I've been probably out of the womb, but since I've been 5, played every sport that I could. Fast forward to 1999. At one point in my life, I was on track to be drafted to play baseball, and I made some life decisions that not took it from me because they were my choices, but that interfered with that. And so in 1999, I'm graduating college, and I remember having a conversation with myself. And as a side note, I actually woke up in somebody's bathtub and didn't know how I got there. So it was a pretty dark place in my life. So the disaster was where my life was. And I remember thinking, if I have all this talent in sports and I'm not going anywhere, I remember, and at that point I didn't know who God was. And I remember just saying, just if you're up there, take everything from me and give it to somebody that's going somewhere. Probably pretty prideful statement, but I remember thinking that. I remember having that conversation to myself. And then it was probably days later where after years and years and years of people sharing things with me and encouraging, I had an encounter with God. Basically just said, listen, I know where my life's going. And so if you're really who you say that you are, prove it. And from that moment, it wasn't some big explosion, but from that moment, deep inside, I knew why I had spent all those years playing sports or coaching or training. And I had all of a sudden this passion just rose up to teach and to use everything that I've known now to coach my experiences to raise up, our youth in sports. And I've had the privilege to work with youth and even at the college level. So it was at that moment, it was in 1999, where there was a disaster where my life was. But the inspiration, I had this encounter with God and my faith. And it was at that moment I knew what I was supposed to do.
What was the hardest aspect of that turnaround?
Um, I think it was, I thought it was probably pride. I mean, I wanted to be somewhere, and I was so mad at myself because of the decisions I've made. And they were pretty terrible decisions that led me, to where my life went. And I just was so angry. And I think the toughest thing was for me to admit that I messed up, that that it was me. I made to own those decisions and kind of accept the outcome of those decisions. That was hard, to get by myself and then move past to say, okay, I get it, but I don't have to stay here. And so that was probably the hardest thing, was to own that and admit, and then actually get up and move on.
How long were you in the trough?
It was probably a good couple days where, where I just was wrestling and wrestling and wrestling. I mean, it probably was there leading up to that, before that, but a good couple days where I didn't want to admit it. I just didn't want to admit it. And I preach to people. It's not how many times you get knocked down, the cliche, it's how many times you get, and I didn't want to. But
that's awesome. Okay, so we've talked about capacity and purpose. And when you combine those two, the sky's the limit, or as I like to say, capacity plus purpose equals happy. It's what I call the happy formula, actually. But I believe the real magic of life comes from that fourth element of significance. So Jay, tell us, how has doing work that creates value to others, you're creating value for others, how does that bring joy and magic into your life?
So for me, a big thing that I tell my kids is people matter. And over the years, I've said people over policy, and, kind of catchy things I tried to come up with probably weren't very catchy, but people matter. And so when I'm working with a youth athlete, and I see just the joy and excitement of them getting something, or even just a kindergartner that's in one of our PE classes, and they run up and give you a hug and they yell, "Coach Jay," and or a light comes on and a student says, "Oh, I didn't know I could get there," and you're involved in that. The energy that I feel in my soul, how energized I feel, that makes me so passionate. And it kind of makes you feel like a superhero. And so allowing these people who, especially in our youth sports culture today, where, if you're really talented, you get all the focus. I say discover, develop, and refine. So these kids that, their parents go up and say, "My kid's never played before, he's not any good." I kind of, in one ear out the other, I love to help them discover an ability, and then to see that is, you said magic. That's magic to my soul. To see that makes me feel like a superhero. I love it. That's what keeps me going.
It's interesting. I also wanted to be a professional athlete, and also ended up short. I got cut from 3 different professional football teams in 3 different leagues over 3 years. And I was discouraged too. But what I've learned, like, your ability to impact young, influenceable children and athletes as a coach,
yes,
is probably way more prevalent than if you were knocking home runs as a major leaguer and you were just an idol of theirs.
Yeah.
And actually touch lives and help mold lives. And I think we need that today. Sometimes parents aren't the best coach for their children because their children don't allow it. But then they will allow learning from some other adult. And oftentimes in my life, it was coaches.
Absolutely. I have numerous parents come up to me and say, "My kid won't listen to me. Can you tell them blah, blah, blah?"
That's right. Or you're benched.
Yeah.
Well, that's really great. Okay. We got a little extra time for some lightning rounds. And I like this because it lets us kind of peer into how you think using words. So the way we do our lightning round is I'm going to read a few of my very favorite quotes, which you haven't seen or heard, and then you get to respond telling us what it means to you. 30 to 45 seconds, and we'll move on to the next. Okay? From John Wooden. Sports don't reveal character. I'm sorry, choke. Sports don't build character, they reveal it.
I love that quote. I love that quote. I think sports and life parallel each other. And everything, I like to merge sports and life. And so the things that happen on the field, you find out where people are a lot of times in their life by how they react to certain situations, deal with certain situations in the athletic arena.
So when you were in your trough in the bathtub, if you had been your coach,
I would smack you.
What advice would you have? Spanking? Has that been it?
Yeah.
What would you have said to that young version of yourself?
Yeah. I would have probably said something along the lines of, first thing, you have to own the decisions you made. That's true. You have to deal with that. You're allowed to grieve those decisions. However, you can either stay where you're at and you see where it's going to lead, or you can get up and you can move forward. You can look to the next thing. And as a coach, I'd probably say, listen, I'll go through it with you. But you definitely need to get up and not stay where you're at.
Good advice. Okay. Another quote. This one's from Shundru Suzuki. I love this one. You're perfect just as you are, and you could use a little improvement.
That is awesome. I've never heard that. That is awesome. So I think anyone can learn. I think anyone can grow. I think at the moment that, especially an athlete, but any person, at the moment that you say, I've arrived, I know everything, I've learned everything I can, I think you stop growing and you don't get any better. I use Michael Jordan with my son a lot, and I say Michael Jordan was the best on the planet, best basketball player, and yet still worked at being the best. He didn't become the best and then stay there. So
he worked harder than everybody else on the
yes,
court still.
Yep.
Have you watched this documentary of him these days? We forget about what that guy did.
Yes.
What a beast.
Yep.
All right, so this is one of my own. The more you say no to what you don't want, the more time, energy, and resources you'll have to dedicate to the things that matter most.
Yes, I agree 100%. That is a tough lesson for anyone. I had to learn that hard in the beginning because I wanted to please everybody. You can't please everybody. I've realized over 20 years that things that I'm going to do, I'm going to reach some people, I'm going to miss some people. Not everybody's going to be happy. There's going to be enough people that are happy. And so I tell people, just come and see, trust me, and if I can't do it, I'm much more easy to say no now than I was 20 years ago. And saying no, I found it actually has gotten me to where I want to go easier than in the past. I don't feel so overwhelmed.
I think it also goes to when you discover your purpose, when you know what you're meant to do in life, it makes it easier to say no to other opportunities that it's just not for you.
Yes.
And there's a lot of pressure from culture that says, well, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're a 40-year-old, man with a family. You should be doing this. You shouldn't be playing sports.
Right. Right.
And so I think we get pulled until we discover, why we're really here, and then it becomes easier.
Yeah.
This one's one from my past. I don't know who the author is, but I'm gonna switch this one. Also from my past. I know where it came. It was a quote that was given to me when I was yet again trying to make one of those professional football teams. And the guy who I was talking with was a coach, and he gave me all this advice, no magic pills and this and that. And when I left his office, I was just getting ready to go down to Los Angeles Raider camp.
Okay.
And when he left, he hands me a little slip of paper, and it said, "Your day belongs to another's dream."
Yeah, I would say to me when I hear that, I tell my son this a lot, but you have this moment, and so someone else is dreaming about where you're at, and you need to make the most of this. So I tell him 100% effort. That's all you can control. You can't control the outcome. You can't control if you're going to make it or not make it. You can control what you put in, and so while you're doing that, outwork everybody 100%. But while you're doing that, take a second, just remember you're there. you're where somebody is hoping to be. And my son just scored his 100th goal, his 100th career soccer goal. And I told him, it's great, all the hype, but just remember, like, all the work you put in there, there are other people that are now thinking, man, I can't wait to get there. And think how you can speak into those people's lives if you get the chance.
Yeah, very good. Okay, last one, quick response. And that's a big quote from Goff. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now.
Absolutely. Someone once told me everything big starts small. And you have these dreams, and you just got to take that first step. It's just that first step, because a lot of times, and I did this early on, a lot of times people say, I'll wait for this, or I'll wait for this in these circumstances. And there's just never going to be the perfect circumstance, I don't think. I've never found it. And so it just becomes, listen, take the step, do it. So if you have this big dream, you have this big vision, take that step. It may be a leap of faith, or maybe a small step, take it, and then see what happens. Because you find out, man, now I can take another step. And then before you know it, it might be 20 years down the road, but before you know it, you've done something. So I agree with that 100%. I love that quote.
Awesome. All right, take us home. We're out of time here. Give me a minute or so and share any parting remarks or comments that you want to leave with our audience.
I would say something that has impacted me greatly. And for those of us who are in the position of influencing, especially youth, but really any age, but for those of us that are in that position to influence people, there's a huge difference. And I had to learn this. I'm glad I learned it early on, but there's a difference between power and authority. So anybody that might be listening that's a coach or an influencer, power, that destroys relationships, and that forces people to do certain things because of your position or your title. I learned, I was fortunate to learn early enough, but I had to learn to lead out of authority, out of a place of authority. And authority comes from a place of relationship, and it's from investing in relationships where the people that you're influencing are willing. And that's where you get, the team that's a family. And so I would encourage everyone that is in a position to influence, this has impacted me greatly, is understand the difference between power and authority, and let's be influencers that operate out of a place of authority and relationship.
Good stuff. Thank you, Jay. And now, folks, if you can hear my voice and you were inspired by today's show with Coach Jay Miller, please donate what you can to WITV7. They're a 501c3 charity on a mission to educate, empower, and encourage. They do good works with your kindness. Thank you, Jay. I love your spirit and your innovation as an entrepreneur by creating many different venues to reach and teach people to live happier and healthier lives with your infectious enthusiasm for all things sports and rec. Good stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, WITV7, for hosting and promoting our show so we can keep reaching ordinary people ready to create extraordinary lives. A special thank you to our sponsors for the entire month of October, Zona Plus and Happy Living. Remember, folks, the more you buy, the more I'll donate. So tell your friends to buy a Zona Plus too. It's good for their health. And most especially, thank you, viewers and listeners. You'll find links to websites and social media and all things Jay Miller. Find him, friend him, check out his on-demand sports and recreation resource called iCoach. It's really cool. From me to you, dear friends, I love you and want you to be happy. We do what we do on the Something Significant show to inspire you to live your life to its fullest, to believe as I do that a better self is always possible today and every day for the rest of our lives. So be bold. If you're dreaming about it, it's time to begin it, for it's on that special path, the one to your dream, your unique and distinctive journey. That's where you'll discover the way to make your mark of significance on the world. So till next time, I'm Matt Gersper. You're awesome. And this is the Something Significant show. And we're out.